Some sellers really don't want to hear the truth. I'm going to talk about that in the latest Home Prices and Insights for Peel and Durham for week ending February the 1st, 2023. As a realtor, I have lots of experiences I can share. And many times I'm pulling back the curtain on some of the things I experience as a realtor. Let's talk about sellers. I will oftentimes get calls from sellers saying, thinking of selling. Come and talk to me about selling my house. So before I go to the listing appointment, I will do a ton of research, get all my data together, and then when I'm sitting with the seller at their home and I've viewed their home, and I can review the data with them that I've collected, and we can have an intelligent conversation on what their home should sell for based on data, not my own personal, beliefs or what I'd like to see happening for them. It's whatever numbers I talk about is backed up by data. It makes sense. So we're here. I normally give them a range. Not all sellers want to hear the truth, though. They have their own thoughts and their own price points in mind, and no matter what evidence I give them, they have other thoughts. As a professional, and there are many realtors who think like me, as a professional, the very least I can do is tell somebody the truth. But it's not always appreciated, and it's not always wanted, to tell you the truth. I'll give you an example. I recently, not too long ago, went to a listing presentation, and like I just finished explaining, I have all the data, as we talked about. It's a beautiful home, really nice home. And I gave them, this is where your home would sell for right now. But the seller's attitude was over here, $100,000 to $150,000 more. We'll call this la la land, and I'm in the realm of possibility, what makes sense based on data. Seller's in la la land. And so we're looking at everything, and I'm trying to understand, is there something I'm missing? And I'm getting the sellers involved with me. I go, look, this just sold, here's what's happening with the market. Sellers insisting, no, they absolutely need to be here. And I said, well, I appreciate you need to be there or want to be there, but how am I, help me out, I said to the seller, how am I supposed to convince a buyer that they should spend $100,000 to $150,000 more on your home than what kind of makes sense? Because let's assume the buyer is working with a realtor. They're going to pull up all this data. Let's assume the buyer has access to all these websites that give them sold price and give them the same data that I'm looking at. How do I convince that buyer to pay way more for your home than anything else that makes sense? The seller's response was, I don't know, Santo, that's your job. Needless to say, I didn't get that listing, nor did I want to work with that seller. But the property did get listed. Shortly after that, it got listed for the price that the seller wanted, and it's been 2 months now, and that property is still on the market. What the seller doesn't realize is that with every day that that property sits on the market, it's being devalued by buyers, and that seller is not being taken that seriously. And a little bit more behind the scenes information, the sad part is that seller is in trouble. They absolutely need to sell. Now, they're trying to sell in la la land, and then there's trying to sell for the most amount of money, which I can appreciate. You want to sell as a seller for the most amount of money, but it still has to make sense based on the current market. If I can give advice, if you're thinking of selling or if you're a seller, work with a realtor who's prepared to tell you the truth. Not what you want to hear, but is prepared to tell you the truth. And you decide if that makes sense, and you decide if that truth is backed by evidence that's logical. That makes sense. Who you hire matters. You can get the results you want, but you got to have the real numbers to make proper, intelligent decisions. Who you hire matters. If you think this video can help somebody you know, please pass it along. Let's get into the numbers. If you want to speak with me about your real estate situation, selling, buying, it's really simple. Below this video in the description there's a link to my calendar. Click on that, book a time that's convenient for you. This way I'll see the appointment ahead of time and I'll make sure my schedule is organized so we can talk about whatever's on your mind. Let's get into the numbers. Now before I get into the weekly numbers, what I have here is for all of Peel Region detached properties broken down by month. Now highlighted in black is January, starting with January 2023, and each black highlighted in black here is January. I go back as far as January 2019. So I go back a few years. Let's look at sales. For January, just past January 2023, 241 detached properties were sold. If that number seems low to you, it's because it is. It is the lowest January on record. Now the Toronto Real Estate Board supplies data going as far back as 1996, and I couldn't find a January that had fewer sales than 241. So going back to 1996, lowest January on record. I'm not sure how far back somebody would have to go to find a month where we did less. So January 2023, lowest month on record for sales of detached properties in Peel Region. Let's look at sales. Average sold price. Average sold price for January 2023 is $1,303,000. $1,303,000 is, if we're going this way, it's 27% lower than where the average sold price was January 2022. We were at 1,780, now we're at 1,303. 27% lower. Well, if we want to hit January 2021 prices, we need to drop 2% from where we are now. Not a lot. 2 percentage point drop will be at January 2021. If you've got hopes of, hey, you know what, I want prices dropping even more. Well, if we drop 25%, we'll be at January 2020 prices. We need to drop 30% from where we are now to be at January 2019 prices. I'm not telling you they're going to drop 30% or 20% or even 5%. Nobody can predict the future, but you set your plans and your goals and you tell me if you think we're going to end up reaching 2019 prices. So we got to drop 30% from where we are now. Let's look at months of inventory. For January 2023, months of inventory is the highest we've had since the summer, since August. We're sitting at 3.4 months of inventory. Let's look at something here. Going back to January last year, months of inventory was 0.7. So January, February, March, April, May to July, we saw months of inventory, we'll say, increasing rapidly, aggressively. And average sold price was coming down aggressively. Then for the summer and the fall and now into January, months of inventory has been increasing gradually, has been increasing at a slower pace. Average sold price has also adapted and is decreasing at a slower pace as well. I'm showing this and I'm illustrating because that is a typical relationship between price and months of inventory. As months of inventory come down, prices go up. As months of inventory go up, prices come down. And I also love it when it actually works out the way I'm saying, the way it's supposed to. Okay, so here we have Mississauga in blue, Brampton in green, and the red line, that's Peel Region, Pickering, Ajax, and Whitby. They're pretty close. They're usually not, the average sold prices are not as close as they normally, but this time they're pretty close. We're going to start off with Mississauga. This is for detached properties only, Broken down by week, I have a whole year on the board here. Where we were, that's in the past, doesn't matter anymore. This is where we are now. 17 detached properties were sold. One of those was at $2 million or more. Of the 17, almost a third, 5 properties sold under $1 million. Average sold price is $1,273,000. 1273 is 29% lower than where the average sold price was a year ago. Now, these numbers, 29%, 30%, they're going to be high for the next couple of months just because we're comparing to the peak last year. Median price of $1,180,000 is also 29% lower than where the median price was a year ago. Looking at the dotted line, that's a 4-week moving average over the span of 2.5, 3 months. You can see both for average and median price sloping down slightly. So looks like the aggressive price depreciation has happened, and for a while now, since the middle of summer, prices generally have still been coming down, but at a much, much slower pace. Sales, the blue, those were sales a year ago. The orange, those are sales current, way off the pace from where we were last year. Remember, also, we're comparing to the peak that had record sales. Sold at list price or more, 18%, so it's not that many. 18% out of 17 sold at list price or more. Last year at this time was 84%. Listings, 42 were listed. We have 205 active listings, properties actually available for sale for week ending February the 1st, and months of inventory sitting at 2.8 months of inventory. Brampton, 24 detached properties were sold. No properties sold at $2 million or more. Of the 24, 7 sold under $1 million, so almost a third sold under $1 million. Average sold price is $1.2 million. $1.2 million is 28% lower than where the average sold price was a year ago. The median price of $1,190,000 is 29% lower than where the median price was a year ago. Sales, no surprise, sales are way off the pace where we were a year ago. And just as a side note, okay, so of the 24, very few, 21% sold at list price or more. But this time last year, I gotta laugh when I read the number, 99% sold at list price or more. Remember, it was mayhem. It's not where we are today, and that was then, and this is now. Listings were also way off the pace of what we were listing last year at this time. Months of inventory has climbed up, sitting at 2.9 months of inventory. And you could see, you know, take out the Christmas break months of inventory here. You can see, you know, 3, 2.9, 2.7, 2.8. Months of inventory is pretty steady. If anything, sloping down a little bit maybe, but prices are pretty steady because of that. Here's my Durham sample. Now, so for Durham, I'm using Pickering, Ajax, and Whitby as my Durham sample. 27 detached properties were sold. One of those was at $2 million or more, but close to half, 13 of the 27 properties sold under $1 million. Average sold price is $1,164,000, which is 22% lower than last year's average sold price. The median price of $1,075,000 is 27% lower than last year's median price. No surprise, we're way off the pace for sales, but for Durham region, keep an eye on how many properties are selling at list price or more. The percentage for several weeks now has been increasing, and last week 59% of the 27 properties sold at list price or more. Listings off the pace from last year. 54 detached properties were listed. Months of inventory is incredibly low, sitting at 1.1 months of inventory, and 0.8 the week before, 1.2 before that. This really helps to explain why such a high percentage, well, high relative to the market we're in now. 59% of the detached properties in Durham region sold for list price or more. The very low months of inventory. These are condos for all of Peel region. 32 condos were sold. One of them was at $1 million or more. Average sold price is $594,000. $594,000 is 14% lower than last year's average sold price. The median price of $575,000 is 14%, also 14% lower than last year's median price. Sales way off the pace from where we were last year. Of the 32, 16% sold at list price or more. This time last year, 92% were selling at list price or more. Listings, pretty much on par for what we were listing last year at this time. And months of inventory sitting at 2.3 months of inventory. Here's a summary of months of inventory. Some are up, some are down. The market's relatively, generally speaking, I'm going to say busier than what a lot of people believe is really happening out there. Unless you're in the market physically looking to sell or looking to buy, it's hard to believe how busy it actually is. A bunch of buyers have jumped in. Listings have not come on board yet to where we can satisfy all the buyers, and that's why you have really relatively low months of inventory. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.